that heat, boy.
Yo, what is up everyone? Today we'll be going over part 2 out of 2 for What If Itadori Was Satoru's Son. Pretty much, boys, last time I left off was after the arc where Itadori and Nanami had went on a mission to investigate a movie theater, and obviously the arc where he met Junpei, saved his mother and all from being killed and all via reverse curse technique. And then Junpei proceeds to join the school because Itadori sees a lot of potential in him, and in his Shikigami, to be more specific. So pretty much after the whole death painting arc, I believe it's called death painting arc, pretty much Itadori would be in a box. Gojo is rolling him down, saying something about a surprise to surprise the other people that he was actually alive, and Itadori went along with it, so thinking it would be a nice joke. So Itadori was being rolled by Gojo to where all the students were gathering. Suddenly, everyone would see Gojo and ask what's inside the box. As he would open it, and none other than Yuji Itadori would come out saying, "Yo." As all the other students were kind of confused, but specifically Megami and Nobara, they were shocked. They're like, what do you mean? Am I seeing things? Am I seeing Itadori? Is that him? So pretty much Itadori would walk up to his friends, as he then kind of say hey, as Nobara would then ask, "So how long have you been alive?" As Itadori has pretty much said, "About a month." As Megami would look at him, he had seen the more, similar look he had, similar to that of Gojo, with the sunglasses and the white hair, kind of, ruffled in a sense. It almost reminded him of the younger version of Gojo, which he had met as a kid, when he was about 9 years old. So pretty much after their meeting, Itadori would be told by everyone not everyone, but the principals, that the Kyoto school meeting event would happen in 2 hours. So Itadori just decided to walk around until he was approached by someone, this being Kasumi Miwa. Now Miwa would obviously have a mistaken identity type thing, where basically she thinks that Itadori is Gojo. Obviously she's a huge fan of Gojo since he's the most powerful jujutsu sorcerer, so she wanted an autograph. So then she would walk up to Itadori thinking she was Gojo, but she was a little suspicious at first because he was kind of shorter. But other than that, she would walk up to him and ask for an autograph, in which Itadori would kind of be surprised, but he would still sign nonetheless, as pretty much she would look at the autograph and it'd be completely different, as she would then ask what's his name and all, as then she would realize this was not Gojo but his son. it was a bit of a comedic relief moment, I guess you can say. So Itadori would just point out to Gojo, who was over there, and told her that she could get his actual autograph. And pretty much Miwa from there pretty much got all the jujutsu high school jujutsu tech students phone number. So for example, she got Nobara's, Megami's, Inomaki's, Yuta's, Itadori's, Maki, Panda, even though it feels weird for the Panda just to be using a phone. Just me picturing it gives me some weird vibes, but that's exactly what happened. Obviously Yuta wasn't there necessarily. He's probably one of the best sorcerers in the whole school, so of course he's gonna be busy. So the whole Kyoto Goodwill event, he will not really be in there much. And obviously Junpei won't be there either. He just came back and he's gotta get used to things before he would participate. But now we'll go to the start, or at least a little bit before. All the Kyoto school students were meeting up meeting up with their principal and all gathering together as they were discussing how they were going to kill Itadori, her being like the Sukuna's vessel. Now, pretty much Miwa would offer or say her grievances for doing this mission, saying that there'd be no reason to take out Itadori since he was possibly going to be the strongest sorcerer, and he's not really showing any evil intent or anything like that. But obviously, none of her students listened. Obviously, as we know, Aoi, I can't remember his name. I'll just say Todo. So Todo is still gonna try that thing with Itadori to see like who he's gonna ask what's your type and stuff like that. That fight's gonna go per usual. But now we're gonna start the Kyoto Goodwill event. So pretty much all of the Jujutsu Kaisen, Jujutsu Tech students would meet up, like being the year 2 and the year 1s, and they would start discussing strategy with Yuji going forward in front of them to protect them with his infinity barrier or his limitless barrier. And then pretty much Maki and more of the mid-range fighters going in behind him to possibly get in any cheeky attacks on their opponents. So Itadori would be running through as suddenly a sword would be coming towards him, this being Miwa using her simple domain. Itadori would then probably catch the sword with his hands, just his finger, as then suddenly obviously she would be immediately knocked out. So if you're wondering how did he just defeat like Miwa without even looking? So he used his limitless barrier, caught the sword, and then just quickly appeared, like moved so fast that moved at like subsonic speeds. Obviously, moved past the vision, like the speed that the vision can perceive, and then knocked her out via neck punch. Then suddenly, he would feel something coming towards him. He then looked to his left as he then see Mai shooting at him with her gun. As the bullets would stop midway due to limitless being a passive ability, it's always active. As suddenly, Itadori would appear in front of her as he would throw a punch in front of her. As suddenly, something weird had happened. His whole body had been moved. This being Todo's technique. Todo would come in telling everyone to back off and that he's gonna fight Itadori. So pretty much Itadori would nod to his friends or his fellow upperclassmen as they would then go about their own fights, fighting the other students. Itadori and Todo would be looking at each other, as Itadori would then get his fist ready with Divergent Fist, as he was ready. Suddenly, Todo would then ask him, "What's your type?" As Itadori would kind of he would kind of be a little shocked and have a sweat drop in a sense. As obviously Itadori would probably answer the same way as canon, being tall, and yeah, I don't really want to say that, but you know what I mean. But pretty much, Todo would then start fantasizing about how their childhood would be if they were like friends together in like middle school. As then suddenly, he'd be like, "You're my brother," or like not blood brother, but like kind of surrogate brothers. As Itadori would kind of be a bit confused. Then Todo would start to go to explain to him how Black Flash works. This time, Itadori will not need the enhancers to use Black Flash, or the tool, the special grade tool to use Black Flash. He'll kind of use it more inherently. So it wouldn't take him too long to master it, as he'd be fighting Todo, and Itadori would be throwing a punch at him as suddenly black and red lightning would surround his fist as he would land a hit on Todo. As Todo would kind of tank the hit, but he'd be like, "Good job, my brother." As then suddenly, that's when the curtain would be used on them, covering the area, making it so everyone can get in except Satoru Gojo. As Itadori would look toward Todo as he would nod his head, understanding that someone has attacked. As they'd head towards the middle, there'd be a crater. Suddenly, someone would jump into that, making the crater. This being, obviously, Hanami. Hanami, I think that's her name. It's more like a special grade, the same special grade they met, or at least Itadori recognizes from the time Gojo fought Jogo. As Itadori started cracking his muscles, not his muscles, but like his knuckles, as he was ready to fight this chick. not chick, because she wasn't really chick, a special grade. So he would, get into his fighting stance as him and Todo would start doing a combination attack on her. Suddenly, Itadori would appear in front of her as he would then use like black flash on her. As suddenly from outside, Gojo is fighting some of the attackers from the outside of the curtain before he would go in. Suddenly, he'd feel Hanami building up her curse spirit into like spreading it into like domain expansion, in which he feels Itadori kind of spreading itself, kind of doing, trying to counteract with it. So Hanami would use her domain expansion, but Itadori would immediately use his domain expansion, not even wanting to look at her domain expansions. He hasn't really fought against domain users like with his own domain. Obviously, you could count like Mahito, but Mahito was kind of caught off guard. This is 1v1 type shit, or 2v1, but Itadori wouldn't go into the jutsu hand sign being middle, pointer finger up, middle finger crossing around it, as he would then say domain expansion, limitless void, as Hanami's senses would be fried as she'd be stuck in motion, as Itadori would have the 2 seconds to then do anything in his power, as he'd appear in front of Hanami before then going to rip, like basically punch her through the chest. As he would use black flash, he'd pierce his fist through her like middle area, as after he'd take it out, he'd jump back as the 2 seconds would finish, as the domain expansion would drop. Hanami would then fall on her knees as she was bloodied. There was a hole through her chest, as it would start to regrow, which did take a lot of willpower and energy out of her, so now she has to retreat. Suddenly, the curtain would be ripped open as Gojo was preparing an attack. Itadori was preparing to throw a punch at her again, but Todo had stopped him. He had then said, "This is the true power of Gojo." As suddenly a huge purple ball of energy would then be sensed by Itadori, as it's sort of like limitless users can sense limitless users charging their techniques up, since it's really familiar with them. So pretty much what would happen is Gojo would then use purple as he would shoot it, as it would go go all through the forest, as Hanami would be forced to retreat, as the whole attack would end. The Kyoto Goodwill event would then be postponed, as now think of it as it was just cancelled. Now all of these students would regroup, as they'd kind of chill, have that whole baseball match. And if you're wondering, does anything change with that? A little bit, but we're gonna go to a specific day. So Itadori was walking through, as he had remembered from the Kyoto Goodwill event, someone had attacked him with a katana. As he had walked up to Gojo and asked him if there was any katana users from the Kyoto school, as Gojo would then start thinking, who in the school uses a katana? As then he'd realize it was Miwa. Obviously, she uses a simple domain to then use, high-speed movement to appear in front of her opponent before then slashing down. Obviously, it states in the wiki, the wiki is reliable when it comes to this context of abilities for characters. When it comes to, things that weren't mentioned in the manga, they get a little bit shaky. But pretty much what would happen is Itadori would go over to Miwa and ask her, where did she get her katana? And she had simply answered that she had got it from her school, and if he asked for one, he'd be provided with one. So he'd get a katana, as he was getting some ideas. What if he had used domain expansion and pretty much used a katana to, reach his opponents faster? Not reach, but he didn't have to punch holes in his stomach, since that felt weird for his hand. He wanted to just slice them down, and the katana was quite appealing to him. As he would start to train, obviously he doesn't really know much sword users. He could ask Maki, but he had asked Miwa. He had asked her how to use a katana, as obviously she would give him the book, The Way of the Bushido. Obviously this seems more logical, since it's Bushido. Usually if you look in the history of Japan, or east. There was obviously 10% samurai, and they had followed the code of Bushido, at least in the history. There was the warrior, I guess not the warriors, but the soldiers, the samurai who were above the soldiers but under the daimyos. Then there was the daimyos, and then that was it. And then obviously way under that would be the peasants. So Itadori would start learning, or I guess training, with Miwa and Maki, since Maki is a weapon specialist, and it would be more logical for him to train with Maki and how to use, a sword, as she uses one herself. She uses basically any weapon. She's really good at any weapon. As pretty much what would happen is, now we time skip to the arc where Itadori, Megumin, and oh my god, I almost forgot her name. Nobara. They fight the special grade curse, being Chozo's siblings. Why am I forgetting their names? They weren't really useful. They weren't really impactful on the arc itself. After the arc, didn't have that much context, except when it came to Chozo, who had wanted to get revenge against Itadori for killing them. So now Itadori and Megumi and Nobara were heading over there with Kiyotaka. As they had went to the school, Megumi's old school, as they had started to question the principal, as the principal would recognize Megumi, as Nobara and Itadori would have that same comical moment of saying, "Were you the troublesome kid?" I can't remember how it was itself. It was like, I'm not even gonna try it, but basically Megumi would knock them over the head, as pretty much that would be the end of that conversation. Afterwards, Megumi would have that whole act of saying, "Oh, we can't find anything here, let's just head back to the school." Obviously that they'd call on the cap, so they'd follow him, as they would follow him under the bridge, where pretty much Megumi would then be caught by Itadori and Nobara, to which Megumi would start explaining to them how his sister died, obviously being through poisoning, or sort of like a disease from the cursed spirit, just the radius around. I believe that's how it was. If that's not how she died, please correct me. So pretty much what would happen is they would start, suddenly they'd feel the presence of a cursed spirit, as suddenly the landscape would change. They'd then be looking at the special grade curse that they had saw a few months ago, this being the same special grade that killed him, but necessarily wasn't him exactly. It seemed like he had gotten an upgrade, as suddenly Megumi would say, "I'll deal with this one. This is the one that killed my sister, at least had a hand in it. You deal with the other ones." As Itadori and Nobara would be forced outside, as obviously that whole moment where Itadori is forced to basically carry Nobara and to that bridge area, and not the bridge, but like the roadside, where they would start to fight the cursed spirit who had used flowers and pretty much coursed it through her Nobara's skin. This would lead to Nobara still stabbing herself, as Itadori would then obviously walk up to Nobara and use reverse curse technique to remove the technique immediately, I guess you can say. As the flower petals were removed from her, would be, dissipate from her arm, as then she would just remove her hairpins, not her hairpins, but the, what is it called? The hammer and the thing. I can't even remember things now. I can't even remember basic. It's the hammer and the nail. So she had to remove her nail from her skin. She had to stab herself, so then the cursed spirit would be injured. Obviously the cursed spirit would be pushed back to retreat, and obviously she would then stab herself again, and then I guess he would fall over after seeing the death of his brother. He'd have that sad moment before he was completely destroyed. Itadori would then, obviously, the cursed spirit was frozen in place, as Itadori would appear in front of the spirit, raising his katana over his head, as he would just slash right down, cutting the cursed spirit in half, vertically. as they would be done with it. I know I didn't really, this is the arc where I don't know too much. All right, obviously it's been like, how do I say, when was the time where I actually watched the anime? I was watching the anime when it was like releasing per week. It was like in March 2020. It was 2021. It was like a few months back. But if I didn't really go much, there was really nothing much to go over this arc. This arc was like, I guess, 2 episodes. There was nothing too much to go over there. But pretty much what would happen is now we go over Shibuya. What would happen is Itadori, Itadori would be awake. Now, suddenly, he would go over to his friend's room, being Nobara and Megumi, as it was late at night, it was like 11:10, as he was kind of bored. He wanted to go outside and venture out or something. He was really bored and hungry, so he went to his Nobara and Megumi's room, as he had picked them up, as now they were heading towards the diner. Once they would get there, they'd be met up with none other than Todo, Miwa, Mai, and the rest of their friend group. As they would sit down together, they would kind of chill. As obviously Itadori's childhood friend, I forgot her name. I really wish I would remember her name, but she would pop up, as Itadori would still remember. She looked completely different. Like, she had a glow up. All right, let's just say that. As obviously they'd have this whole reunion arc, and then that would kind of end. As the boys, the students, it would be false if I say the boys. I mean, they're all friends, but they would all kind of chill for the rest of the night, kind of becoming more friends and developing their friendship per se between each other. Now we start Shibuya, and this is the thing that's been fucking me over. I'm thinking to myself, how do I end this series without Gojo getting sealed? And if I had Gojo sealed, how would I go over anything after that? Because the manga isn't even updated. I mean, it's not updated past that. Right now, the current chapter was right after Itadori had gotten Higurama's points, the guy who then pretty much has like the gavel and the domain expansion where you can't have any violence, you can't fight it or something like that. I think his name is Higurama. But basically, I can't really go much over that. So I might be pulling an asshole, but I hope you guys can forgive me, since I can't really, it's going to be hard to finish this. This is kind of why I need to wait for Jujutsu Kaisen to wait, but I was too eager. The movie had just came out. I wanted to surprise everyone. But pretty much now what'll be happening is the whole Shibuya arc would go relatively the same. Itadori would help Mei and the rest of the students, and that same guy who had the whole talking about 60 frames per second, and Megumi and Nanami and Maki, that would fight that special grade in the beach-like domain expansion, and they'll win. Itadori this time will be fighting Chozo, and that same dream-like thing would happen where Chozo thinks that Itadori is his brother or something, and that would cause him to align with him. They would then go over, as they would then see Nobara dead on the floor, as they would also then see, not dead, but her whole left eye was just gone. It was a skeleton. As then they would also see, Nanami. As Itadori seeing this, his eyes would start twitching, and for a few seconds, his eyes went from those usual light blue to a really dark blue, as his hair would start to rise up, as suddenly a purple aura would start to surround him, as he would look at Mahito, saying that he's gonna just take his head off. Suddenly, Itadori would use his domain expansion, which he really hadn't used before. He had usually just used his Black Flash and other things like that. And pause. I didn't go over this, I just remembered. That's why I said forgive me before I went over this arc. But basically, Itadori would still be force fed the 10 fingers by Jogo. Sukuna would take over. I didn't really go over Sukuna much. He seems a little irrelevant when it comes to the story. Obviously, I'm not gonna have Itadori befriend him or some shit. It would be out of character for Itadori to just befriend him. I don't want to be like Kurama or some shit. I'm probably gonna have Itadori use his sort of an absorption technique to absorb all of his powers when he gets 20 fingers. So basically now he has about 15 fingers. So Itadori is now fighting Mahito. He had seen Mahito basically kill Nobara, but yeah, then you ever use reverse curse technique on him, on her. But now, pretty much Mahito had used his doll technique. He can't overwrite that. I know reverse curse technique is really strong and it's really helpful for healing, but Nanami was already way gone. He even accepted his death, but hoping that he was kind of hoping he got to read his books though, on a beach house. But unfortunately, as he was dying, you couldn't really do that. But obviously now, we're gonna go back to the present. Itadori activates his domain, and Sukuna's watching from afar. It's like, this kid, I really hope he can, put this guy in the ground, because even Sukuna's annoyed with Mahito, the way he tried to touch his soul back then with his doll technique. Not his doll technique, it's like it's like a transformation thing. Curse, I can't even remember. It's like a cursed doll technique. It transforms your body into like a cursed, kind of like a cursed spirit at that point. So basically, the light would be exposed to Mahito, but something felt weird about this domain. Usually he'd just be like, oh shit, we have 2 seconds. No, this domain was infused with more negativity. Itadori had witnessed his friends die, and now he was gonna get payback. He is now going on a rampage, not because of Sukuna, but because of his loss, or not his loss, but just his anger in general. He lost Nanami. He was very good, I guess, mentor, as now he would appear in front of Mahito as he would raise his katana up to his head, as he would then say, "You're done." He would then slice down as Mahito's body would be split apart, as Itadori would then start to use purple to erase his body. He did not want Mahito to just disappear into that substance of his, the cursed doll substance. Now he wanted to erase him from existence. There was no way of him being able to, reconnect his body, in a sense, just come back, regurgitate his body, that's the word. So basically, he would erase Mahito from existence. Now he needs to go after Geto. He needs to force Geto to open back the prison realm and free Gojo. He would then appear in front of Geto suddenly, as Geto's eyes would be widened, as Itadori would grab him by the throat, as obviously he would slam him into the ground, as now he wasn't playing. He would then rip off one of Geto's arms, as he would then pretty much pin him against the wall with some cursed techniques to keep him in place, as he would start to interrogate him, telling him how to open the prison realm and free Gojo. As now Geto is on the verge of death, or at least the Geto who pretty much took over the original Geto's body, as now Geto would then for the first time in his life, he would see fear. He saw fear from just being but being attacked by Itadori. Just his presence alone was scary, as he would then be forced to open the prison realm, as soon as he would, Gojo would be found, as Itadori would jump in, as Gojo would then be like, interesting way, but thanks, he would thank, Itadori for saving him and all, as now they would save Gojo, as obviously Itadori then throw Geto over to Gojo to deal with him, since Geto is Gojo's, I guess, childhood friend, and he felt that Gojo would want to deal with him finally. Obviously, Gojo would be forced to end him, since his body's literally being possessed. He was never alive, or at least the real Geto wasn't alive. As that would mark the end of the cursed spirit. Not cursed spirits specifically, special grades controlling and trying to end all of sorcerers' lives, I guess you can say. As Itadori would grow up to become a special grade sorcerer, as he had obviously, you know what, I'm gonna let you guys take the story from here. You guys comment down below what you wanted the story to come from here. Will Itadori take the mantle from Gojo? Will he become a villain and basically take over? That's your choice, honestly. But without further ado, guys, this will be the end for this series on What If Itadori Was Gojo's Son. But without further ado, guys, have a good night or day. Right now it's like 2 a.m. when I'm recording this, so, but peace.